For roughly 125 bucks, you throw one of these on each one of your guns and you can now run this can. So we've all been to that gun store where you walk in, you're looking at the stuff, you try to ask someone a question, and they're like, oh, take a number. I understand waiting in line and everything like that. Also too, there's just a lot of times this attitude about kind of being like condescending, and it's like, dude, I'm just here to look at a gun and learn about things, and that's just off-putting. A lot of times I like to do my research online rather than going and talking to someone behind the counter who's just gonna talk down to you if you call it a silencer or a can. It's all the same thing. Basically a muffler for your gun. But some people, they want to get all technical because it makes them feel good about themselves. I guess the technical term for it would be a suppressor. However, when they first came out with them, the patent actually was called a silencer. But they've moved away from that, and now they're called suppressors. So today's video is just going to be basically my personal opinion on it and what I think is helpful information for the average Joe who wants to put a suppressor on his gun. So this is the suppressor I went with. The first thing I think you should know about is if you want to go with a Baffle style suppressor or a flow through style suppressor. The one I went with right here, this is flow through, and we'll get into the reasons why. So the second thing you should know about when it comes to suppressors is if you go with the Baffle style, you're gonna have to tune your firearm to it. At least if you're wanting to run it on an AR style platform, you're gonna have to tune your weapon to the suppressor. What I mean by that is you're gonna have to adjust your gas block, you're gonna have to adjust your buffer tube spring, all those kind of things to make it your firearm function for that suppressor. The downside to tuning your firearm for that specific suppressor is, okay, say you don't want to run that can on that gun, you go to take it off, well, your firearm might not function at all or in the same way it would as if you were running the can. That's just something to think about when you guys are going to buy a suppressor for the first time. My number 3 thing that I think you guys need to consider when going and buying a suppressor is if you buy a caliber specific suppressor, that's great if you plan to just run it on one firearm. If you have a collection of firearms or if you have different calibers, you can get a specific caliber and then run numerous calibers underneath of it. So if you go with a, for example, this is a 30 cal can. I can run this on my 300 Blackout. I can run this on my 5.56. Numerous different calibers you can run having a single suppressor and just the muzzle device on your firearm. A fourth thing to consider is the barrel length. So a lot of cans have barrel length restrictions. So if you want to run it on an AR pistol style platform, you can run into some issues depending on the suppressor you purchase. So knowing if it has barrel length restrictions on it is pretty good depending on what your application is. Number 5, you'll hear a lot of people talk about it, and it's the POI, point of impact. So when you're putting one of these on your firearm, obviously it's changing some things with it. So what that means is at distance, on a pistol, you won't really see it that much because you're not reaching out to farther distances. But when you put it on a rifle and you're shooting at extended distances, that's where you're gonna really notice it. Typically, they say you should stick within, no greater than 2.5 inches at 100 yards. So that's kind of the threshold of when you're looking for a can, you wanna make sure you get a quality one that is no greater than 2.5 inches at 100 yards. Those are my top 5 things that you guys should consider when you're going to buy a suppressor for the first time. If you consider those things, you can kind of get away with running only a couple different suppressors for your firearm collection, depending on how many different calibers you have. Like I said, this is my first can and I love it. I'll get into what this one is and talk more about it. But if you follow those 5 steps that I just referred to, I think you can get away with running about 3 different cans for a broad generalized firearm collection. If you have a 30 cal can, you got your rifles covered. And then if you run a 45 caliber can, you can get most of your handguns, and then a 22 rimfire. Then you got your 22, your pistols, and then your rifles, which I think that's the route I'd like to go. Like I said, this is just my first one right now, and I really like it. I wish I had one of these things years ago. Yeah, if you stick to those kind of guidelines and you get more broad when it comes to calibers instead of caliber specific, I think it's a lot more beneficial so you don't have 10 or 15 different cans, one for each gun. It makes it just a lot more simplified, and why not just have one that you can screw on multiple different platforms. So let's get into what this one is, and you'll understand the reason why I chose this one once I go over the specs on it. This is the Huxwrx Flow 762 Ti. So it's a 30 cal can that's 3D printed titanium. It's very lightweight, it's just over 11 ounces. It's pretty short. It's just over 6 inches in length and then 1.8 inches in diameter. So it's a little thicker than some of your other cans. They do make this in the 5.56 variant, but like I said, then you're stuck only running that on that specific platform. So for me, going with a little bit bigger, still being very light, was a good choice for me. So I think this can is perfect for your AR, your AK, your SCAR, all those different platforms. You can run this, 300 blackout, 5.56, 7.62, all those different calibers you can run with this can right here. So if you have, a handful of different platforms and you go with their muzzle devices, I think a muzzle device is about 125 bucks. You can screw one of those onto the end of each one of your barrels and just swap this can from different platforms. So I think the biggest selling point for me when it comes to the Huxwrx can was the fact that it is the flow through technology. So that's why it has all these holes on the front of it. So basically your typical Baffle can, it's not gonna have these holes, and it's got a bunch of baffles in here. Depending on the longer it is, the more baffles, the more quiet. So with this one, you do not have to tune your weapon for the can. There's literally zero back pressure. And when we talk about back pressure, if you went with your standard Baffle can, you're gonna have none of that gas escaping out of the front of the can. It's gonna be blowing out your ejection port. It's not the end of the world, but if you're doing a lot of shooting and all that gas is coming back, you'll hear about people, their eyes burning and the powder getting on them. That's because the Baffle can is causing a lot of back pressure, and that's why you got to tune your weapon for it. And then it's coming out of the ejection port. There's charging handles and stuff they make to help, dissipate that gas and get it away from your face. But that was just something that I didn't really want to deal with. So that was just another plus as to why I went with this can. When I referred to the POI, this can does have a 2.3 inches at like 330 feet. So this is going to be within those tolerances, and those are like military standard tolerances. For me and in my application, this was perfect for that. It is the 3D printed titanium, which is pretty cool. So when you buy this suppressor, you get the muzzle device that threads onto your barrel. You torque it down to the barrel, and then the suppressor is a backwards thread onto this thread pattern right here. And then they also include the wrench. So if this gets locked on there after a lot of shooting, you can just use this to get it off. And then also you just put a torque wrench or a socket on this, and then you can torque this down to your proper specs on for your barrel. You torque it down, I think it's like 20 pounds. Don't quote me on that, and then it's just a reverse thread. So spin it backwards. Now it's on there. And then since it's a backwards thread, every time you shoot it, it tightens and it's not gonna back itself off. And that's literally as simple as it is. For roughly 125 bucks, you throw one of these on each one of your guns, and you can now run this can. Super simple. And then the finish on it, it's a pretty nice finish. It's the black Cerakote. They do offer an FDE. I just opted for the black one. I really like it. It's super lightweight, and I just think for your first can, or you want to run it on multiple different platforms and you don't want to spend the money to have a 5.56 specific and a 7.62, all that kind of jazz, you just get this guy and you have it on there and you're set. But yeah, for me personally, I think the Huxwrx is just, their technology behind it is pretty cool. So I know when the Huxwrx came out with the flow through technology, there was a lot of mixed reviews about it. But if you noticed, a lot of other companies are now going with the flow through technology. And it's because it's pretty much dummy proof. I mean, you grab this thing, you have to have a muzzle device on your weapon anyway. Get one of theirs, screw this on, screw it on multiple different guns, and you're good to go. So it takes all the tuning and all the other jazz out of it to where it's, you want to throw this on there, shoot your gun suppressed, make it more enjoyable. It's perfect for that. I don't think you can go wrong with it. Yeah, they're a little more expensive, but if you do the math on how much it's going to cost you, if you go with a cheaper one and then you have to tune your gun to it, and then you have, say, just 2 guns that you wanted to run suppressed, it'll add up a lot because you're going to have to tune your gun for it. And then once that one's set up, then you're gonna have to tune the next one for it. Whereas this one is whether on or off, your gun's running and there's no adjustment to it. Today's day and age, there's so many different videos, so much different information. You go to a gun store and everybody's a subject matter expert and you're just a peon that doesn't know anything. So knowing these things will really help you guys make an educated decision on what you guys think is best for you. Like I said, this is just what's best for me and my collection and how I'm going about doing things. I would like to get their 22 rimfire can. They have it's basically the same technology, but just for a 22. The thing's tiny, and I think it would be really good and really fun on a 22. So that's gonna be something else I might try to get down the road, but I'm not an expert. I'm just trying to help people, and this whole platform is just a community to where we can all learn and help each other out and not be talking down to other people who are trying to maybe, you know, like I said, you might be your first time, you don't know anything about them, you might stumble across this video and be like, well shoot, now I know something. So that's the goal here.